This is Ms. Wagner.
I thank the chairman, and I would like to point out to my good friends and colleagues on the other side of the aisle that the subject of this hearing is the fall of Kabul, examining the administration's emergency evacuation from Afghanistan. It's very specifically that. And I want to thank the chairman for organizing this long overdue hearing to examine the Biden administration's responsibility for the catastrophic fall of Afghanistan. In the 118th Congress, Democrats held a grand total of 2 hearings on this critical issue, leaving the American people, I think, confused and frustrated. I'm hopeful, I'm confident that under Chairman McCall's leadership, we will get to the bottom of this tragic debacle. I want to thank our witnesses for sharing their heart-wrenching experiences with us today, and I want to recognize their courageous service and sacrifice in Afghanistan. I'm deeply grateful, along with my colleagues, all Americans, for your heroism and your testimony. My eldest son, Raymond, an Army Ranger, served as a combat infantry officer in Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom. In fact, he attended the same St. Louis Catholic high school as Mr. Lucier did, graduating just 1 year apart. I suspect you share the same fundamental motivation, Mr. Lucier, that brought you, both my son and you, to Afghanistan from St. Louis, that Americans, and indeed all men and women, should be free of tyranny and able to live without fear. U.S. service members' achievements in fighting terrorism, protecting human rights, and advancing women's equality should be celebrated as an example of America's compassionate leadership and dedication to human dignity and to our own safety and security. The Biden administration's dishonorable flight from Afghanistan was a betrayal of our service members and the brave Afghans who lived, worked, and fought alongside them. It made America less safe, and it created a human tragedy of unthinkable proportions. The administration's needs to take responsibility for its staggering failures. Secretary Blinken sat in front of this committee in one of the just 2 hearings that we had while American families mourned 13 sons and daughters tragically killed in the terrorist attack on Kabul airport. Others worried and prayed over the dozens and dozens of injured. The secretary had no answers for us. A St. Louis area family, the Schmitzes, buried their son that week. He was killed at H. Abbey Gate at just 20 years old. American soldiers acquitted themselves with incredible valor in an unimaginably dangerous and chaotic and traumatic situation. Sergeant Vargas Andrews, Specialist Gunderson, I want you to know that every member of this committee is honored to be with you today and listen to your story. Thank you. The American people deserve answers to understand why these tragedies unfolded. Service members and their families deserve answers. We have to hold the administration accountable. Lieutenant Colonel Mann, I am so grateful that you shared the story of Hasina Safi, former Minister of Women's Affairs. Today is International Women's Day, and it is heartbreaking beyond words to think of thousands of brave, smart, capable Afghan women and girls barred from their schools and workplaces, confined to their homes, prevented from accessing basic necessities and even life-saving health care. Why did it fall to Task Force Pineapple to extract Minister Safi? Shouldn't the Department of State have made every diplomatic effort to bring her out of danger?
Thank you, Congresswoman. We were very surprised when the bulk of our focus was on Afghan special operators, and when we learned that Minister Safi was on the run, it came as a real shock. What I do know is that Ambassador at Large Kelly Curry, who had worked Women's Global Affairs, was helping to guide her along with a range of other women leaders. And they had tried time and time again to include reaching directly out to Washington, D.C. I mean, understand that Hasina Safi was the Minister of Women's Affairs. She was
Yes.
one of 4
I know who
female
she-
ministers in the entire country, and arguably the most wanted and hunted woman in Afghanistan at that time. Her ministry actually became the Ministry of Virtue and Vice as the Taliban took over, ironically. And so she was on the run. No one from the State Department brought her in. And so what she ended up doing was it was coordinated for her to move into what we call the Pineapple Express, which was moving through the open sewage canal with her family and up to a point of recognition where this young man right here and a couple of other paratroopers pulled her inside the wire. And one thing I'll just say, I have to throw a shout out to the 82nd Airborne on this one. She had a terrible fear of soldiers from when she was a child as a refugee. The Russian soldiers, the Soviets, had really abused her father. So when she learned that it wasn't the sewage canal that terrified her, it was going and having to be confronted with NATO soldiers. And she was terrified about it. And it was his first sergeant, Jesse Kennedy, who in the middle of the night reached down and grabbed her hand and pulled her out. And he said, "My name is Jesse, you're safe now." And Hasina says that when she went into that canal, she had 5 brothers, but when she came out, she had 6, and they're still in contact to this day. So I don't know fully why a sitting minister was not brought in by the State Department, but I do know that had it not been for the 82nd Airborne and the people right there at that hole in the fence, that she probably wouldn't have made it.
I thank you all. I appreciate the chair's indulgence. I yield back.
Chair